I'm Rob Licuria, Gold Derby Senior Editor here with Tami Reiker, DP Extraordinaire of Regina King's featured directorial debut, One Night in Miami. Tami, you had your work cut out for you to bring to life some really weighty material that originated within the confines of a small hotel room on a stage, so double whammy. What was the most challenging aspect about translating this play into a cinematic version of the story that we see on screen?
Well, the most challenging aspect was those very long dialogue scenes, those 12, 15 pages of dialogue, amazing, incredible dialogue, but just page after page, not even a screen direction. So that was the big tackle for Regina and I, and she really wanted to keep it alive and very immersive for the audience. So that was definitely our biggest tackle, and I suggested to her we keep both cameras floating on a jib arms, so that the operator would be manually operated, not on a hothead. That the operator would be in there with the actors and keep switching the perspective. But that was definitely the biggest challenge, was in time. Time is always a challenge, having enough time to do that.
Yeah, and so even though you employed that really interesting strategy to kind of move around the room, you don't really employ any distracting camera moves or angles. I found it to be incredibly immersive, surprisingly so, because I was expecting, like happens with a lot of play to film translations, sometimes I feel a little claustrophobic, sometimes I feel a little bored because I'm just sitting there. I felt very immersed and very much a part of this conversation between these giants. And I was wondering if you can pinpoint a good example scene, for example, of where you're conscious about making us, the audience, feel like we're kind of like a fifth person within that space.
I feel like it's one of my favorite scenes, and what Regina and I were trying to constantly create, it really happened in the Bob Dylan moment, you know, where we're creating, like carrying him from the closet back to the record player and down and then back up, and then he turns right into the camera, and just, you could still feel and see the other three characters behind him, but just, so you're staying very involved. So we didn't want it to be cut, you know. That was a moment, and I feel like it's, you know, that it's such a powerful moment also.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, because I find that really breathtaking. It's so simple, and yet I just felt it just felt more tactile to me, and a lot of that has to do with the lighting that you decided on, and the angle of the shot. The complete inverse is obviously the external scenes, particularly in the boxing room.
Right.
Is there any particular trick to properly shooting a boxing match, or did you just come at this completely from left field and try something new?
Well, we studied a lot of boxing films, Regina and I, and then we studied the actual fight over and over, and, you know, especially our like 1.5 minute clip from each, you know, boxing fight. And what we really wanted to do is, again, have an immersive experience. And so we had one of the cameras, you know, we started at eye level, and it didn't feel right, and it felt so much more intense when he was cradling the camera and it was just right behind Eli's back. And I think that, combined with having the other two cameras getting very interesting angles outside of the ring, you know, it made it feel like a different type of boxing scene, different than what you'd seen before. You feel like you're in it, but then you're also getting all these very interesting angles.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Also, when we're talking about, I think, the pivotal scenes within the hotel room, because that's really the whole point of this movie, is to listen to these four black icons talking about a range of topics that we, in so many ways, that is in so many ways so prescient to what we're dealing with today. I'm wondering if there was ever a hesitation to linger on someone's face, or did you ever want to make this more like interesting and distracting, or were you comfortable enough to just go with having us focus on these men and on their faces?
That was, yeah, Regina really wanted to keep that immersive experience by just holding on them. And even sometimes when you're holding on them, we're constantly making this very imperceptible move. It's just shifting ever so slightly.
Yeah.
I think that really, and then also those moments where you have the energy, like another one of my favorite is when he comes back from the telephone booth and is checking all the lamps in the window to see if the room is bugged, and that energy of following him and staying with him, you know, kept that very interesting and alive, and you felt his nervousness and his anxiety.
Yeah. That brings me to this. There's a scene in Copacabana towards the beginning of the film when Sam Cooke, played by Leslie Odom Jr. beautifully, comes out and he's not having a very good night. Scenes behind him looking out at the crowd, or the very well-dressed white people at their tables, it was very nerve-wracking for me. What is the trick when you're shooting inside a darker theatre? What's the trick to making the audience feel like they're in his shoes?
Right. So that it was interesting because the trick was to have it definitely feel like, you know, that they're at a performance, but you needed enough light so you could feel them, you know, reacting to him. And that, you know, we had incredible extras in New Orleans, and the wardrobe and hair team just really, every time they would come out, I was just blown away, you know, at the perfection to every last extra's wig and hair and costume. But that was definitely a big, you know, an interesting part of that scene is that dynamic, because he's on the floor. It's a, you know, it's a floor show. He's not pulled way far back like in the Boston Ballroom, you know. So that was interesting, and just keeping over his shoulder so you feel that connection between the two of them. They're not that far away, so he could hear them. He can feel their reaction.
That's right, and yet they're so close, and I felt like he was so separated from them at the same time, and he was feeling so exposed. It's a really, I think it's probably one of the highlight scenes in terms of the way the movie looks. So yeah, congrats on that one. It's so simple and effective. Do you find, and you know, I've spoken to a few other people from artisans from your film, and a lot of us agree that sometimes the best work is the work that you don't notice. Like obviously we want to see really beautiful landscapes and amazing shots, but often great cinematography is the stuff that you're not really noticing, and it's the stuff that immerses you in the film. Do you subscribe to that notion, or are you more of a fan of just being as noticeable as... No,
I totally subscribe to that. And that was what Regina really wanted. She didn't want the camera to be, you know, to be noticed, to have big dramatic moves that pulled us away from the characters. And that's why we just were always settling. Like, I think everything except for the boxing was always on the jib arm. So we always, because it gives you a little float right and left and up and down. So the camera's alive, but it's not calling attention to itself.
Yeah, the camera did feel very organic, actually. And I didn't quite realize why, because obviously that's not my profession. I have no idea. But it absolutely, I think that's a key to the immersiveness of this film. It brings me to this. Regina King is like a legendary actor. She's won lots of awards. And she's actually quite an accomplished director, but this is her first feature. I'm wondering, given that you've worked on a few films, what surprised you about working with Regina? What did she bring to the table that you really appreciated?
Well, I would say the first thing was that she had such a clear vision of this film that she wanted to make. And even if she didn't always have the right technical term, she could explain exactly what she wanted, how she wanted to feel, or the emotion she wanted out of it. And so as a cinematographer, I mean, there's nothing more you can ask for than someone that's so clear, because you're there to make their vision come to life. And the more clear they are, the more you can pull out of them, you can create the film they want.
Do you think it helps that she's such an accomplished actor as well? How does that affect a director's method in bringing a film to life?
Well, I think for the four actors, I mean, she's an actor's director, so she's very protective of them also, you know. She's protective of, you know, how they're feeling and how much time they need. And she would, you know, ask them, is it all right? Do you feel this camera like right behind your head? And, you know, Kingsley was always like, I don't even know they're there, you know? It was a very interesting set. It was, you know, it was quiet and the actors stayed on set a lot. You know, a lot of times it's like, okay, move you know, and they leave and we do our thing. But a lot of little tweaking was done very quietly while everyone stayed right there. You know, so you really felt you were there with these four men, you know, they stayed in character.
Wow, that's fascinating. And it actually reminds me, you know, this film says a lot about the tumultuous 1960s and the civil rights movement, and draws so many parallels to the current Black Lives Matter movement and the social upheaval of the last 18 months in the US. And I'm just wondering what it was like on set. This was filmed way before 2020 and the events of 2020. But what was it like back then, knowing that what you were doing was going to really make a real statement about you know, Black Lives Mattering and about social justice?
It really, I would say it made all of us really, you know, our best performances are giving it everything we had because we knew how important it was. I mean, there were moments that you were in that room on set, you know, and you could feel your hair on the back of your neck stand up. It was so powerful. Like afterwards, you know, she'd call cut and you could hear a pin drop because everyone was sort of frozen, you know. As a, you know, as someone working on the set, every person on there really wanted to be there and wanted this to be the best it could be. So that was very exciting, you know, to feel that energy.
What a dream to feed off that energy and then
Yeah.
do your best work. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking this, because I'm sure, I wonder as a female cinematographer, do you get a lot of questions like, what's it like to be a female cinematographer? Like, does that kind of question irritate you, or do you understand that it's something that people are interested in because it feels like such a boys' club?
I do. But you know what's been really amazing in this, you know, this round of, you know, it hasn't come up all that much. It's been very interesting, and because there is a big wave coming of women that they're here, and it is one department that is changing, you know.
It really is, isn't it? And like, it's actually probably 5-10 years ago, it would be a question that I would absolutely ask everyone, but every female cinematographer, and there weren't that. These days, I've interviewed plenty of them, and which just
yes,
things are moving. Same with directors. Finally, you're getting. It just really doesn't matter what your gender is, or even your race or ethnicity. What matters is your talent, and that brings me to this. How did you get involved with this project for Regina King? This is a huge one for her. This has to be perfect for her, right? So it's her debut. So how did you get the chance to do it?
So I had not worked with Regina before, and I got the producers, and Regina sent the script to my agent and sent it to me, and I absolutely loved it. I created a lookbook and went in for an interview, and we just really had a lot of the same ideas about this very rich, saturated movie, really vibrant colors and vibrant blue in Miami and the warmth of the hotel room. So we really saw eye to eye on that, and then we were connected at the hip then for 4 months.
Yeah, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
My final question is one that it's actually one of my faves that I get to ask artisans, and it's about what other work has inspired you over the years, or what your favourite cinematography is over the years. What's something that you look at and think that is just the gold standard in my profession? Have you got something that you can pinpoint?
Well, I could, you know what, I would pinpoint, I like to talk more about what I've seen recently, because I feel like a lot of people can draw back, oh, Kieslowski, red, white, and blue, and but I mean, I just was blown away by Normal People. That she did such an incredible job. It was so beautiful. That was the movie where you felt like you could reach out and touch it. You know, that feeling where you're in the room with them, and just the way the camera moves and the light, that really blew me away. And it was very simple, you know. Yeah.
I can't tell you how much I adore DPs, because it's just this moving art the way that you guys can play with light is so magical. And on that note, I really congratulate you on wonderful work in One Night in Miami. Good luck at the Oscars. We hope you get nominated, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.